So let's talk a little bit about the condo market in Miami. There's a lot of news. If you look at my little iPad here, if I type in Miami condo market news, I get a lot of really negative articles about South Florida condo market faces risk of collapse, rising costs, new regulations, all sorts of stuff. So let's talk about the condo market in Miami. There's a lot of negative news lately about rising inventory, rising costs. There's a lot of just general doom and gloom about the condo market in Miami. I think the reason behind it probably goes back to the Champlain Towers collapse a couple years ago. So there was a building in Miami Beach that literally collapsed. It was an old condo building. Hundreds of people died instantly. It was a terrible, terrible tragedy. And it brought up a lot of questions about the structural integrity of aging condo buildings. In Miami, there's a thing that it's called a 40-year certification. So basically, when a building reaches 40 years of age, it's required to go through a process whereby the city deems it structurally sound. So basically, it's an inspection that has to get done. You have to get a structural engineer to come take a look. You get a report done. And if there's anything that pops up that could deem the building not safe, then you have to go through the process of fixing those things. It's a pretty lengthy process. It could get very expensive, and depending on the condition of the building, it's very difficult to do. And then after the 40 years, you have to do it every 10 years. So the 50 to 60 to 70 year recertification. In the case of the Champlain Towers, the building is near the water, so it's subject to saltwater corrosion. It was probably not very well built to begin with, and after 40, 50 years of this building existing, it just ended up just not being structurally sound, and it just collapsed, which is pretty bad. So after that collapse, a lot of regulations and a lot of new emphasis was put on this 40-year certification process. And all these old buildings actually that hadn't gone through the process, now all of a sudden are starting to have to go through this 40-year certification process. And there's a lot more fear around buildings and their integrity, which before no one really thought of, right? You sort of assume that when you build a building, it'll just kind of last forever, right? Not really the case. So we're at a point in the South Florida market where a lot of these older condos are reaching this point where they're having to go through this certification process. And what happens is that a lot of these associations, these owners, are just not skilled or not well equipped enough to really understand how to go about this process. And I think the problem is a fundamental problem with condos in general, which is developer comes in, builds a condo tower, sells every single unit to individuals, you, me, Joe Schmo, and then walks away. And all of a sudden, these owners, who most of them know nothing about real estate, they know nothing about building, maintenance, property management, nothing, now have to form an association. Basically, it's just a group of people that are the owners whose job is to take care of the building, make sure that it's maintained, deal with whatever maintenance, repair issues that may pop up. Basically, they become property managers. So these people who do not have any real estate knowledge, nor do they have any desire to be real estate people, now all of a sudden have to do this job where you don't get paid, and basically it's thankless, and it's just one problem after another. So there's an inherent problem in just the concept of condos in general, which is that the people who are managing these buildings are not real estate people, and they don't want to be managing the building. So it lends itself to a lot of deferred maintenance and a lot of problems that could, after 40, 50, 60 years, cause these buildings to fall into disrepair. So you've got this twofold problem. You've got buildings that are getting old, and then buildings that are getting old with management that sucks, like bad management that doesn't want to deal with the aging building. And that's leading to a lot of people just wanting to sell their condos, getting out of these old buildings. And it's just creating just a general lack of demand. Now, let's not say lack of demand, it's just a higher supply of condos than normal, because people would rather just get out than to deal with the fixing of whatever issues that have to happen and deal with all of the corruption and all of the bureaucracy that these associations create. It's too many people, too many cooks in the kitchen, too many people's opinions, and then that leads to just like inactivity and stalling of progress. And that's why these condo buildings are just kind of getting old. So, moral of the story, if you're in an old, aging building, just be ready to have to deal with these sorts of maintenance issues if you're in it for the long haul. If you're a condo investor and you're looking to get in, I would suggest looking at newer buildings. You're gonna have less issues. Smaller buildings where there's less individual owners, so your one unit is a larger percentage of the overall building. You're not one of 1,000 units, you're one of maybe 12, where you have more control, more of a voice. when it comes to managing the buildings. And if you can get some sort of controlling interest, if you can somehow buy 51% of the building, you're in much better shape, because then you can control the association, you can control the process. You're not subject to having to deal with an association that is just corrupt and incompetent and difficult to deal with. So that's pretty much the gist of the condo market. I wouldn't say that condos are dead. I would just say be more careful, be more choosy about the buildings that you get yourself into. If you're in an older condo, consider maybe selling. Don't expect to make too much money. Just kind of cut your losses and move on, or take a bigger role in managing the building to make sure that the thing gets managed correctly. That's pretty much it.